Good afternoon. This is Don Preston, President of Preterist Research Institute, and welcome to Preston's Ponderings. This is kind of my new setup here, a little less formal. Anyway, as I mentioned on my morning musings, I've been doing a lot of study on John the Baptizer. He's just incredibly significant in regard to the topic of eschatology. Consider the following, if you will, with me, and be sure to check out my other videos on John the Baptizer, and go to my website, eschatology.org or bibleprophecy.com, and check out some articles that I've written on John the Baptizer. But think with me about this. Malachi chapter 3 verse 1 said, "Behold, I send my messenger before your face. He will prepare the way before you, and the Lord shall come to his temple." Now, here is the prophecy of the coming of the messenger before the day of the Lord. What kind of a day of the Lord is this? Is it the incarnation? No. Verse 5 tells us the nature of the day of the Lord. "I will suddenly come against you, or to you, in judgment. I will come in judgment against the sorcerer, the adulterer, the perjurer, and those who mistreat the widows and the orphans, and those who turn away the alien." So there's no question whatsoever that this messenger was to prepare for the coming of the Lord in judgment. Okay? Well, guess what? According to Malachi chapter 4, verse 5 and 6, Elijah was to come before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. You see, the messenger is Elijah. Elijah is the messenger. But I want you to think about this. Since the great and the terrible day of the Lord comes at the climax of the last days, that means the messenger, i.e. Elijah, would appear in the last days. You got that? See, it's easy. Let me say that again. The great and terrible day of the Lord would come at the climax of the last days. You can compare Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 21 on that. But the great and terrible day of the Lord would come at the climax of the last days. Therefore, the messenger who would come before and prepare for that great and terrible day of the Lord would appear in the last days. Well, John was the messenger. He was Elijah. I know he was the messenger because Jesus said so in Matthew 11 and verse 10. This, speaking of John, this is he of whom it was written, "Behold, I send my messenger before your face." So it's not even questionable about whether or not John was the messenger of Malachi chapter 3, and therefore Elijah. Okay? So what does that mean? It means the last days were in effect and running and present in the ministry of John. Now, I was raised believing the last days didn't start until Pentecost. But if John was the messenger, and the messenger was to come, i.e. in the last days, before the coming of the Lord, since John was the messenger, that means he appeared in the last days. I've written a book, and I tell you, tons and tons of people have told me it's changed their life. The book is The Last Days Identified. And I want to make a very special offer. This is just for the YouTube viewers, okay? The book normally sells for $11.95 plus $4.50 shipping on my website, www.eschatology.org or bibleprophecy.com. But here's what you do. You go to the website, you send me payment through PayPal, but you got to make a note. This is taking advantage of the YouTube offer. Just simply put YouTube in the note, okay? It will charge you for the shipping, but when I see the note and the order for the last days identified, I will refund the shipping. That's a savings of almost $5. It's a pretty good deal. And like I said, tons of people have told me this book has changed their lives and how they look at the subject of the coming of the Lord. So go to my websites, eschatology.org or bibleprophecy.com. Find the bookstore, order the book, The Last Days Identified. I'll refund the shipping. Hey, you know, John the Baptizer really is a tremendously important and significant person in the story of eschatology. I hope you can see that just a tiny bit. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings here this afternoon. We have more on the flip side. I'll see you then. Thanks for joining me.